President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday, Wednesday, signed the National Students Loan Amendment Bill into law. Mr. President signed the bill in a short ceremony at the State House in the presence of the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, Deputy President of the Senate, Bura Jibrin, and the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, and the Minister of State for Education, Hannatu Musawa, and other top government functionaries. President Tinubu initially signed the student loan bill into law back in June of 2023 to offer financial support and assistance to Nigerian students in tertiary institutions. Speaking after the signing the bill, President Tinubu said no Nigerian, regardless of their background, will be excluded from obtaining quality education. This is to ensure that no Nigerian, no matter how poor their background is excluded from quality education and opportunity to build their future, said the President at the State House in Abuja. The executive bill, titled "A Bill for an Act to Repeal the Students' Loan Access to Higher Education Act of 2023 and enact the Student Loan Access to Higher Education Bill of 2004 to establish the Nigeria Education Loan Fund as a body corporate to receive, manage, and invest funds to provide loans to Nigerians for higher education, vocational training, and skill acquisition, and other related matters." But the big question and the big story for today is, apart from the bill, which is seen as fulfillment of one of President Tinubu's campaign promises, will it truly help to develop the educational sector and education of our young ones? And will the scheme not go the way of others as it concerns corruption? Well, these and more as it concerns Mr. President finally asserting to the student loan bill is what this edition of the big story is all about. And that is the signing of the student loan amendment bill and its intended gains to the educational sector. That's what we're looking at today on the big story. We're looking at that took place in a brief ceremony just yesterday at the presidential villa when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu finally added his signature to, or rather his pen to paper, sent into that very bill that many feel might change the narrative, especially concerns the educational sector. But whatever side you feel, well, we need to talk about it, and hence we're doing this today on the big story. But who better to help us look at it rather than an educationalist and also a legal practitioner looking at the law as it concerns that bill, and talking of no other person but Barrister Godwin Ojiba. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Well, Barrister Ojiba, this bill was made possible after separate consideration, especially by both the Senate and the House of Representatives, of the report of the Committee on Tertiary Institution and Tech Fund. Now, according to Mr. President, he said no Nigerian, regardless of the background, will be excluded from obtaining quality education on account of the bill. Now, I'm only keen in getting your reactions. First to the bill, as much as your reactions to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's statement when he signed the bill yesterday.
Well, thank you. Naturally, as an educationist, my views or my reaction to the signing of the bill is that of an applause.
Applause?
Yes, I thank him for signing the bill to an act. Now that it has become an act, if it is implemented as it is intended to be, then it will benefit the larger majority of the people who are downtrodden. Okay. So for me, it's good. Now, whether it will go the way of the other ones that have been done, other committees, commissions that have been done, either by being reduced by corruption, it's a different kettle of fish altogether. That cannot be ruled out entirely.
Okay. Okay, now let's look at the bill itself. Now, we do know on June 12, 2023, Mr. President first signed the Access to Higher Education Act 2023 into law to enable indigent students to access interest-free loans for the education pursuit of in any Nigerian tertiary institution. Now, although the government initially announced its full implementation will commence in September, we do know that it suffered several delays before now it's now being signed into law. But that's not where my question lies. My question lies on the access to these loans. Do you feel these children can truly access this loan? Because that's where the problem has always been. yes, it's always a beautiful one on paper. The money, funny enough, will be in the bank. But the question is, would these children that these access or this money are intended to, would they easily and readily get access to this? Would they not be like, okay, well, it's just like there's cookie in the jar, but the children surrounding it are still feeling hungry, can't access it?
Well, I think you are right to an extent, to the extent that this thing will be bottled by some bureaucracies.
Okay.
Usually you will need to fill forms, you need to meet certain conditions. Some of the conditions might be such that may be difficult for some persons to meet. And to that extent, for instance, there is this issue that for you to access the loan, you will need 2 civil servants, maybe on level 12, maybe a lawyer, and all these persons might not be easily be available for the students to access. Now they are in school. Supposing you are in a school, so maybe you are in ABU in Zaria, and you needed to sign such a form. How do they travel back to Delta State to be able to get a civil servant to help you guarantee the loan? Because I do know that if you are from Delta and you are still in Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria, you may not know the civil servants that are there in Kaduna State. So those issues will come up. And there is this issue of this, your total income, annual income will not be more than 500,000. Of course, how are you going to be able to determine all of these ones? So I see that there's going to be a clog in the wheel of progress. They should have liberalized it. Once you present a letter of admission into the university by JAMB, authenticated by a valid university identity card, it should be enough to give you. And the subsequent ones will be predicated on your presentation of your results as issued by the university, to ensure that you are still in the process. Yes, once those ones are guaranteed, for me that should suffice. But if you didn't do that and you now insist on fulfilling certain conditions, those conditions may make it impossible for this person for whom this project is administered to be able to achieve it.
So you feel it's going to be cumbersome?
It is. Clearly it is. Clearly it is.
But should we not look at how or why this was made possible, or
why are those conditions?
Why it was inserted in the bill?
Of course, to ensure that it doesn't go to the wrong person, and to ensure too that in the event that it gets to be the right person, the person pays back at the appropriate time. And finally, if in the event that the person is unable to pay, you fall back on the persons who guarantee the loan. Those kind of issues are there. And in order for you to get somebody to sign for you, because of the fear,
person has to have that trust.
That trust. And in Nigeria, there is trust deficit when it comes to money.
So you see these as a will or a plug to the will of progress as a concern?
Clearly it is. Clearly it is. What government ought to have done is just open it, make it an open-ended thing, fulfill certain conditions, which should be the admission letter, valid identity card from the university, continuous performance in your university, and so be it.
Yes. Now let's still remain with the process, because the process will determine the sources of failure of this very, very scheme. Now let's look at another. You especially can assess, especially when you've now gotten your admission, especially in the university.
Yes.
You can assess directly through your university. And there's this fear that, let's look at how the university process has always been over time. We used to have JAM. It was just because of the pure knowledge that corruption was well embedded in the issue of JAM that we had post-UME exams.
Yes.
And now, even with reliable information, even the post-UME exams are also riddled in corruption. Now, would money not change hands on account of you reaching out to some major critical stakeholders in the institution to even give you the form in the first place? Are we not going to see this form go to the highest bidder at the end of the day, depending on what you can give? And funny enough, looking at what the statement coming from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday, that's intended for the poor. I wonder how much a poor child can cough out to get some of this form if it finally goes that way. Corruption.
Well, there will be corruption, but the way I expect that it should be is that in the present time and age, where everything has gone digital, we expect that the form will be online. You download it, fill it online, you return it online. Otherwise, these issues that you raised would then rear up their ugly head. So what one expects is that once the forms are available, then they should be made online. You fill it there and you send it through that same process. Otherwise, of course, the Nigerian factor that you alluded to must rear up its head, and that will be a clog in the wheel of progress.
Okay, now let's still continue with the whole process, because I'm really keen on it. Now, there's this backdrop, especially as it concerns that, and funny enough, it's an expected jail term.
Yes.
If this money is not being paid. That's what many students are concerned. But that's not where my fear lies in itself. It's also the fear of obtaining and paying back these loans. We've seen on many forums and even discussion, and even in all honesty, in reality, when Nigerians are made to pay for a certain amount that they collected, but are made to go through the process and give little or something to those that are saddled with the responsibility of checking, and they'll tell them to go and see no more. Now, we're talking about the issue of payback, because if these monies are not paid back, we might not have enough to give out to other intended.
Because it's a revolving loan.
It's a revolving loan. That we do know. Are we not going to meet or get issues as it concerns repayment? Because even if you look at the process, they are telling you, you start working over a period of time, the money has to come. But we both know that we have many graduates, 10 years even after graduation, that are still seeking for job. And even funny enough, those that might even have been lucky after 6 years,
may not be willing to pay.
End up going to private schools that pay little or nothing to them. So let's look at even the repayment at itself. Are we not also going to get issues? Well, we've left obtaining it itself. But now let's go to the payment. Are we not going to get issues when it comes to repaying these loans?
Between you and I here, Nigerians are not known, or do not have the kind of character that you think we should have for purpose of being integrity conscious. It is not in our character to pay them.
Well, that's a huge statement, but go ahead.
Now, what that means is that many of these loans will fall into these persons who will not be willing to pay.
Okay.
Not because they didn't have a job after the university education. Some might see it as government largesse.
Yes, my own piece of the national cake.
My own piece of the national cake.
Came to train me.
And in any case, you rightly alluded to the fact that in this present age and time, getting a job has become a serious issue in Nigeria. And so most of these children that will leave the university may not easily get job as they should get. And if they didn't get, how are you going to be able to ensure that they pay? So the payback becomes an issue. And some of them who would even get will allude to the fact that after all, this other person is not paying, and so I will not pay. So if you ask me clearly, if you introduce something that looks like budgery, in fact, even in the UK, in America, where you have the student loan board, there are already big issues already of inability to pay back these loans.
And those are even well-structured communities.
More structured community where people have integrity, where people have conscience, where everything works. You have a good data system where you can trace them, unlike in our society where you live in Ughelli and before you know it, the man travels to Maiduguri. You don't have any information about him any longer. So these kind of issues will crop up. And so paying back will become a big issue, and that will crop a big deal into the system itself.
But let's look at the funding itself. And it's a specialized fund is being made to manage, to acquire, manage, and even distribute that loan, and even seek its repayment. Now, we've had beautiful fund as it concerns education. One beautiful one is Tech Fund.
Yes.
And we know how that has truly...
Tech Fund has worked very well.
Revolutionized our educational, our tertiary institution, I'd rather put it that way. Now, let's look at the management of these funds and how that can also help to either map or make this scheme possible. Many has come out to say, well, why create a separate fund? Why can't it still go through the normal university process, go through the hands of the university itself, institutions, rather than having a separate entity that will be collecting this fund? Because many will argue that if it's well embedded in the tertiary institution, it can easily be monitored by the school itself, because these schools are the ones that will, at the end up taking this pay from these children because they are paying for their institution. So I want your reaction as it concerns the management of this fund. Are you quite confident that it's better to be an independent body managing it, or the tertiary institutions should be made a major critical stakeholder in the issue of management of this fund and disbursement also.
No, the argument is neither here nor there. First of all, those people who argue to the effect that the university would seem to have some good grounds. But my concern
to back up their argument.
To back up the argument. But my own position is that the independent body would appear superior, a superior argument, to the extent that if you left it into the hand of the university, it would then be managed in such a way that only persons who are in the good books
of the institution
of the institution will now be benefiting.
Okay.
And now corruption at that level will easily be noticeable. But where it is nucleated and centered into only one body, that particular
irrespective
body,
of the tertiary institution.
Irrespective of the tertiary institution, just as JAM is, this body becomes a clearing house. So if you have this body that is responsible for the disbursement, for the recollection of the money, that will just be the ideal thing to do. So it's easily able to manage it, they're easily able to track whatever fund is going on. That, you know, the universities are up to 100 and something, both public universities. No, I think the private universities are not involved. Anybody who goes to private university is presumed that the parents earn more than 500,000 a year. And so because of that, they are clearly not involved. But the state universities and the federal universities are up to 150. And you will understand that a lot of difficulties will be involved in logistics, in having to trace to this university in Kano, come to Calabar, go to Enugu, and you know, but if you nucleate it in one body, then you can easily go to the body and say, the accountant general of this body, where are the funds that you distributed, how was it distributed, where are the books, get an auditor and get the books audited. So it becomes easier and better and smoother for all of us.
So you stick with a totally independent body?
Independent body, handling it rather than the universities as a body.
Well, we enjoy the way you're handling this discussion, but we'll plead with you to hold on. We need to go on a break now. But when we come back, we'll continue our discussion looking at that bill that was signed into an act yesterday. And we're talking about the student loan bill, more of a campaign promise of our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu coming into reality. But the question still remains, are we going to have it only on paper? And how really effective will it be if it finally kicks off? Let's go on a break.